Hi kids, it's Mr. Eric with another science quest. Today, I am in Avalon Preserve. This is a forest and a field. And the question we're going to investigate today is, why do forests have such an effect on our environment? Why is it so cool in the forest compared to out there in the field where it's so hot? To help us out, one of my friends is joining us. Her name is Cathleen Anthony, and she's an employee of the Maryland Department of Natural Resources.
My name is Kathleen and I work at Gambrel State Park in Frederick, Maryland. And I've been doing this for 2 years and I love the parks and the environment and trees. And so I wanted to share with you guys today some information about trees, because you don't get into this kind of work doing what I do without loving it and learning it. And since I love them so much, I'd like to share more about them with you guys.
And the first question we're going to ask her is, why do forests have such an impact on our environment?
Which is a very good question. And there's actually two ways to do it. And the first, you definitely know, is shading, right? You know, if it's really hot in the middle of a summer day and you're out in the open and the sunlight's straight on you, you feel really hot, you know, if you just step underneath the tree, you immediately feel cooler. And that's because of shade. Because trees block and reflect sunlight. So instead of hitting you and heating you up, they send it back into the atmosphere. And another fun experiment to kind of do is to feel man-made structures in comparison to natural ones like trees and plants. If you hold your hand near some asphalt in the summer or a building, when there's sunlight on it, it's really hot, and that's because those structures, they absorb heat and they re-radiate it at you. So you'll have the sunlight coming at you from one direction and then the heat coming from man-made structures from the other direction. There's just all this heat right there. But trees and plants break that cycle by shading us and by reflecting all that heat back. And so that's one way they help keep the environment really cool, so it's great to have them around. And the second is a little trickier, is called transpiration cooling. So transpiration really simply is kind of like how you breathe. Transpiration is how a tree breathes. They suck up water through their roots, and their whole structure is kind of like a really complex straw. Water comes from their roots and water goes out their leaves. But when it goes out their leaves, it's not water anymore. You know, it's been turned into a gas. And so it's how a tree breathes, and it's also kind of how a tree sweats. And so when they do this, when they release this water all the way through the trunk, up and out through their leaves, if you're in the area where they're doing this change from liquid to gas also cools you down being in that area. It helps you feel cooler. So both the shade and the transpiration help keep our environment cooler. And that's one of the reasons I think trees are fantastic.
Thank you, Kathleen. I guess that really explains the difference between a cooler environment like this one in the forest
and a hotter one, like this city street.
So here we are, not 20 feet away from where we were in the woods, and the temperature itself is maybe 5 to 10 degrees higher, even in a field of green. The forest has that much to do with bringing down temperatures. As you can see, trees are very important for the environment. But I can't even begin to tell you how important it is for the actual climate of planet Earth. So on a larger scale, why are forests so important to the climate on planet Earth?
It's a fair question, and there's actually a lot of reasons and a lot of answers. Some of the first major ones are the fact that trees produce stuff. You know, you can cut down a tree and get wood from it and build things. And you do it the right way, and you've made the planet better. Trees produce food for us and for all sorts of animals. Trees are great for the planet because they shelter all sorts of creatures and biodiversity. If you look at one tree, the number of different bugs just in your own backyard that you can find is amazing. So that really helps our planet to have all those different kinds of life forms provided and cared for through the physical structure of the tree. Whether it's like a human where you might build something out of it, or an animal that needs a place to sleep, or us and animals who just want a snack, to find an apple in a tree. So that's one reason they're very important for the environment. The second is that trees really help to hold soil. Soil, when it gets washed away or blown away, when it moves away from where it is, it's called erosion. And it's bad because as soil moves away, it's harder and harder for things to grow and for the environment you're in to be healthy. And trees, with their deep roots and the way their roots interlock with each other in forests, those help to prevent erosion. Those keep soil where it needs to be. And that really improves the health of where you're living if your soil isn't getting blown away in the wind or washed away in the rain. And that's very beneficial to the environment. It means that all the animals in the area stay healthier, anything you try to grow stays healthier because you still have your soil. And the last thing, the really big one that's very important right now, that makes trees so important to the planet, is how they transfer gases for us. So it's often said that forests are the lungs of the earth. And this is because trees breathe, frankly. They intake certain gases and they output other ones. And there's a couple of different things in play, but the major one is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is something that you and I exhale. It's something that we create when we burn fossil fuels, like when we run a car. And if there's too much of it in the atmosphere, what we end up with is a planet that gets too warm because it's just too insulating in our atmosphere. And lucky for us, trees breathe carbon dioxide. And so they will intake it and they use it in building their structures. They build their trunks and their leaves and their roots out of carbon dioxide and some other elements, of course, as well. And the more carbon dioxide they take in, the less it's in our atmosphere that potentially makes our planet too warm and uncomfortable to live on. And in addition to that, while you and I breathe oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide, trees are the opposite. So they take in this carbon dioxide and they exhale oxygen, which we need to breathe. So it's a very nice balance. If you have trees in an area, you've got much better air to breathe because of the balance that they've struck with you and with the people and the animals that live there. And that makes them super important to the environment. So all sorts of forests and all over the world do this. And the more trees and the more forests we have, the better the health of the environment and our entire planet.
The next maps that you're going to see are from NASA. They basically show how carbon dioxide in the air is absorbed into what is called heat traps in forests and jungles. These forests and jungles absorb the carbon in the atmosphere and cool the planet by releasing more oxygen.
This map basically shows with colors the different biomes or environments on planet Earth. For our purposes, we just need to know that the blue areas are vegetation like jungles and forests, while the red and yellow areas are deserty and have less vegetation and are more dry. Not surprisingly, these large areas of jungle and forest are also CO2 traps. Those large areas trap carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and then using photosynthesis make oxygen for us.
This next chart shows how oxygen is released into the atmosphere by jungles and forests around the world.
So this map shows where the canopy on Earth is the highest, so the jungle and the forest canopies, the top of the forests. These are also the locations that reflect the most heat and produce the most oxygen. This map shows the photosynthesis production on planet Earth. You'll see that the same areas where there is jungle and forest are again making a large portion of oxygen. and have photosynthesis going on. But you'll also notice that there's some photosynthesis going on in the ocean, especially the colder oceans.
So thank you kids for watching again, and stay tuned for another episode of Erik's Science Quest. Until next time, bye-bye.